When CBS announced on November 2, 2015, that a new Star Trek series was being developed, the hearts of millions of Trekkies around the world were filled with joy. After waiting for nearly a decade after the cancellation of Star Trek Enterprise, the news was met with eager anticipation. One of the most successful entertainment franchises of all time was launching a new series right after its 50th anniversary. What could go wrong? Spoiler alert, this is not a story with a happily ever after ending. Could it be? Perhaps, but the whole story is still unfolding and the jury is still out. This is something that we will explore here, and while we have no idea how the story will end, we do know how it began. And now, after 3 live-action Star Trek series that fans either loathe or love, if you think Star Trek is divisive today, you only have to go back to the beginning to find out exactly why. This is the story of a studio who needed to stand on the shoulders of a franchise to launch a streaming service. This is a story of love, greed, money, good people who make bad decisions, and bad people who make good decisions. This is the untold story of new Star Trek, and if you think you've heard this story, you have never heard it told like this before, so you don't want to miss this episode. Also, make sure you stay tuned until later in the show, where we are excited to show you why Liquid IV will forever change the way you hydrate your body. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do so now, and give us a thumbs up if you want more inside knowledge about your favorite shows. And make sure you stay tuned to the end to see how to get this awesome Captain Pike Final Frontier inspired graphic design from the amazing artists at mixtees.com.
You're dismissed.
Right, but...
This is the end of the conversation.
Captain, if I could...
You can't.
Right, but I have this...
The conversation's over.
When 40 million people love something, it can be very powerful. Can you imagine the wonders that many people working together can create? As many as 100,000 people built the pyramids, and an estimated 300,000 people built the Great Wall of China. Remember Hands Across America? In 1986, more than 6 million people from across the United States held hands for 15 minutes in an attempt to form an enormous human chain. In a quarter of an hour, they raised more than $15 million to fight hunger and homelessness. Now imagine how much money 40 million worldwide Star Trek fans could produce. Could it be enough to launch and sustain a streaming service and reinvent an 88-year-old broadcast company for the future? That's exactly what CBS president Les Moonves was thinking when he greenlit the new Star Trek series late in 2015. It sure wasn't because he loved Star Trek and believed that the franchise was not only entertaining but a beacon of positivity and hope for the future of all people. No, Moonves despised science fiction in general and hated Star Trek in particular. One of his first acts as CBS CEO was canceling Star Trek Enterprise in 2005, ending Star Trek's 18-year run on television.
Sheer f***ing hubris.
So why did Moonves cancel Enterprise? Because he finally could. According to Connor Trenier, who played Trip on Enterprise, once Paramount Television head Carrie McCluggan was fired, it was all downhill from there. Enterprise had a great first season on UPN, but Paramount's hot little network was costing too much money and ended up folded into CBS and into the waiting arms of Moonves.
He was also known to be frequently intoxicated.
No one took him seriously.
Sherry Lansing, Paramount head, Star Trek-friendly executive, and Moonves' boss, was able to keep the show from being canceled. But when Moonves became Lansing's boss in 2004, following the Viacom split of CBS and Paramount, nothing could stop him from canceling Star Trek, and that's exactly what he did at the end of the show's 4th season in 2005. The word was out. No Star Trek under Les Moonves. These are the series of events that would set the stage for a new generation of Star Trek a decade later. With Moonves' documented dislike of the franchise, was there anything that could make him change his mind? 9 years after the demise of legacy Star Trek, in October 2014, Moonves announced the launch of a new service, CBS All Access. The new service would provide live streaming that would offer thousands of episodes from CBS Television's catalog. Netflix had successfully disrupted traditional network television with original programming like House of Cards, and the handwriting was on the wall. Moonves wasn't going to wait to make a move. Other networks were latched onto the Hulu streaming service, but CBS decided it was going to go its own way. And the reason why is because it had an ace in its pocket. MOONVES had been approached by Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu to make a new Star Trek series, and he made sure everyone knew that they were willing to pay big bucks for what he called CBS's family jewel. MOONVES may not like Star Trek, but he loves money. And remember those 40 million Star Trek fans around the world? He figured they would be willing to pay monthly for it, and he wasn't wrong. When Star Trek Discovery was launched, CBS All Access would gain a record number of subscribers. We would eventually learn that MOONVES was so heavily invested in his new streaming service that once a Star Trek show was announced, he wasn't beyond micromanaging things to get exactly what he wanted.
Wow. Sorry. Didn't mean to scare you there.
But let's get back to that in a moment. As early as 2012, Bryan Fuller had been knocking on CBS's door to make new Star Trek. Fuller started his writing career with Star Trek, writing episodes on both Deep Space Nine and Voyager. A true fan of Star Trek the original series, Fuller told the network he would drop everything to become the showrunner for a new Star Trek television show. At the time, Fuller was receiving critical acclaim for his adaptation of Hannibal Lecter in the series Hannibal, but he had been dreaming of Star Trek. While speaking with Den of Geek in April 2013, Fuller told them his idea for a show based on the USS Reliant. He wanted Angela Bassett to be the captain and Rosario Dawson to be the first officer. Early versions of the characters Captain Philippa Georgiou and First Officer Commander Michael Burnham. As you can see, Fuller knew exactly what he wanted to do early on. You can learn a lot about what kind of Star Trek Bryan Fuller was going to make based on his observations in history with Star Trek. He loved Deep Space Nine, but he hated Voyager. Voyager was his least favorite Star Trek series, despite the fact that he only wrote 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, but was a part of 59 episodes of Voyager. He lamented being selected to work on Voyager over Deep Space Nine. He thought of the Voyager writers' room as snobs, who made him rein in his geekdom, while the DS9 writers' room had no shame about their love for the genre. Or did he admire Deep Space Nine showrunner Ira Steven Behr, who said he didn't give a what Rick Berman said? Berman had been calling the shots on Star Trek since creator Gene Roddenberry's death, and Berman's goal was to uphold Roddenberry's ideals as a primary focus. Deep Space Nine had started out episodic, but fought to become more serialized by the 6th and 7th seasons, which would end up way ahead of its time. This is what Fuller wanted: serialized Star Trek. He wanted to do a whole season following Voyager's Year of Hell, a 22-episode story arc with entire episodes without Captain Janeway, following crew members on shuttlecrafts. Berman shot down the season-long story arc for Year of Hell, opting for 2 episodes instead. Berman thought of Star Trek as episodic and wanted Voyager to follow Star Trek The Next Generation as opposed to Deep Space Nine. So to be clear, Fuller's Star Trek vision was serialized, with less focus on the captain and more focused on crew members under stress to see what happens. Another critical component to Fuller's Star Trek vision was that the captain or main character be an African American or Asian woman, following Star Trek's pattern of diversity. And as an openly gay man, Fuller said if he had a chance to do his version of Star Trek, it would have at least one openly gay character. So as you can see, Star Trek Discovery was born way before CBS ever hired Fuller for the job. But Discovery was only the appetizer for Fuller's 4-course meal. When he pitched Star Trek to the CBS brass, Fuller wanted to do something totally different with the franchise. Inspired by American Horror Story's success, Fuller wanted to create an anthology of Star Trek shows that would encompass single seasons. The first season would be set 10 years before the original series, and it would branch the divide between Enterprise and TOS. Following seasons would be set during the original series, then during The Next Generation, and then finally a time beyond anything we've seen in Trek thus far. He wanted to do a universe of Trek shows. CBS told him to create a single serialized show first to see how that performed before committing to an anthology series. Fuller agreed, and Star Trek Discovery was born. But David Staff, the president of CBS TV, wasn't going to let Fuller go it alone. Alex Kurtzman, who had ties with both the Star Trek reboot movies as well as CBS shows like Hawaii Five-0 and Scorpion, was brought in to help Fuller develop the series.
Buckle up, nerd.
Kurtzman had a 3-year deal with CBS and his new production company Secret Hideout, and Discovery would be their first production under that deal. But despite Kurtzman's involvement and being a co-creator, Star Trek Discovery would be Bryan Fuller's vision, and as we'll see, it would continue even after he left the show. CBS had announced way back in 2015 that its new show would premiere in January 2017. This would not be the case. Fuller was announced as the showrunner in February 2016. In June of that year, he announced the first season of the show would consist of 13 episodes, and in July the series was officially titled Star Trek Discovery. He also revealed the show would take place in the Prime timeline, so his show would not be confused with the modern rebooted Star Trek films to include Star Trek Beyond, which had just premiered in theaters. Also in July, CBS announced a blockbuster deal with Netflix, who would release Discovery outside the United States and Canada. The deal would essentially pay for the entire first season of the show at a budget of $6 to $7 million per episode. Fuller and CBS immediately started having disagreements on the direction of the show. The production began to overrun its per-episode budget and was falling behind schedule as a result of Fuller also showrunning another new series called American Gods. CBS executives became frustrated, feeling Fuller should be focused on having Discovery ready for release in January. Fuller, attempting to remedy the situation, hired Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harberts in August to serve as co-showrunners with him. He had previously worked with them on Pushing Daisies and thought they could help him get the show back on schedule so he could continue working on American Gods. In September, he and Kurtzman asked CBS to delay the series release so they could meet the high expectation of the show. So the studio pushed the premiere back to May 2017. At the end of October, after months of tension and internal strife, CBS asked Fuller to step down as showrunner, essentially forcing him out. Yes, there were delays, budget issues, and disagreements, but what is the straw that broke the camel's back? Before we share Fuller's demise, let me quickly tell you why you are going to love this video's sponsor, Liquid IV. Sometimes a product comes along that is so incredible, we just can't wait to tell you about it. Liquid IV is a great tasting electrolyte drink mix that hydrates faster and more efficiently than water alone. Each packet is bursting with fresh, natural flavor. It tastes so good. It's not only our optimal way to hydrate before every show, but its clean ingredients and 5 essential B and C vitamins have actually replaced coffee for some of our family members. Forget all those other overly sugared, underly supplemented products you've been drinking for years. Get 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks and actually feel hydrated with Liquid IV. The product is powered by the science of cellular transport technology and is specifically designed to enhance rapid absorption of water and other key ingredients. Liquid IV has several amazing flavors, but make sure you try one of their best sellers, strawberry. It's amazing. All products are also available at Costco, but we'd love for you to click on the link in the description below to get 25% off your order when you use our code, the Popcast. Try our favorite flavor, lemon lime. We promise you won't be disappointed. Try Liquid IV today and help your body feel better faster. As we've seen, Fuller wanted an African-American woman to be the main character in his show for a long time. After a long search, he finally found his perfect actress for his role, Sonequa Martin Green. What did he love about her, and why did he think she was perfect? Did he like the tough exterior character she was currently playing on The Walking Dead? The studio wanted a fresh face in the role, which Green qualified as. But we believe there was another reason he chose her. Fuller had been consulting on the series' lead character with Mae Jemison, the first black woman in space. Jemison was inspired to become an astronaut by the character of Uhura from the original Star Trek series, so having Michael Burnham inspired by Jemison is a case of Star Trek's legacy coming full circle. And perhaps Fuller had an image of Jemison in his mind when he found Green, because there is an uncanny resemblance between the astronaut at the time of her space mission and the current Walking Dead actress. Fuller wanted Green bad, but there was a problem. She was contracted to AMC, and they would not release her until her character was killed off in April 2017, which was only 1 month before the new premiere date of Discovery. But Fuller stuck to his guns and insisted Green was the right person for the role. His inflexibility, which was about to cause another delay on top of budget concerns and direction, was the final straw. Fuller stepped down as showrunner to focus on American Gods, which meant Kurtzman would need to take action. He immediately promoted Berg and Harberts to full showrunners for the season. And because he had his hands full with Universal's The Mummy, he brought in veteran Hollywood writer Akiva Goldsman to oversee everything during pre-production. In the meantime, Green had been blown away by Fuller's vision for Star Trek and said she needed to do it. Green told Digital Spy in an August 2017 interview that the opportunity had left and then come back to her the previous December. Based on Green's interview, it appears that when Fuller was let go, Kurtzman and CBS initially removed the opportunity from Green, believing that her unavailability because of The Walking Dead would make it impossible to meet Discovery's production demands. But by the end of the year, a suitable replacement couldn't be found, and the studio realized the production was going to be delayed anyway and brought the offer back to Green. Fuller, who had a reputation for not backing down from what he wanted, was so set on Green that he may have intentionally delayed production despite the cost to the studio to be able to get her for the role. Green shared some cryptic tidbits of information, admitting that she was initially aware that Discovery was waiting on her to wrap The Walking Dead. She said it was very strategic, and she was just learning at the time of the interview exactly how purposeful it was to get her on the show. When Discovery finally premiered on September 24, 2017, with the two-part pilot episode The Vulcan Hello and Battle at Binary Stars, fan reception was mixed, and specifically Green's performance had quickly become divisive across the fandom. Trouble had been brewing leading up to the premiere. Longtime fans had concerns. Could a prequel so close to the original series be done so that it doesn't take away from the original? Why did the Klingons look so radically different? What happened to the TOS-era uniforms? And why does the show have a dark and more adult tone? There are always concerns by fans leading up to a new Star Trek series. Picard could never replace Kirk. Janeway can't command a ship. And once the fans realize it's different, but it's still Star Trek, they are usually fine with it. But then Jason Isaacs poured fuel onto the fire. Only a month before the premiere of Discovery, Isaacs, who played Captain Lorca, told the New York Daily News that the new show would throw away the legacy of William Shatner and Patrick Stewart and expects to upset die-hard Trekkies. He said, "I don't mean to sound irreverent when I say, I don't care about the die-hard Trek fans. I only care about them in the sense that I know they're going to watch anyway. I look forward to having fun with them being outraged, so they can sit up all night and talk about it with each other." It's a surprise Isaacs didn't belt out a battle cry before starting war with Star Trek fans. The comment got the attention of William Shatner, who reposted the quote on a tweet calling it Jason's folly, to which Isaacs immediately blamed the Daily News for misquoting him, although a retraction was never printed. As a result, many longtime fans were immediately ready for a fight, believing Isaac's words to not only be a challenge, but also a harbinger of truth, that the series is going to be so different from what they know and love that he knows they aren't going to like it. Not a good sign. When Discovery aired, some people loved it. The critics seemed to like it, but Isaac's comments would come back to roost because a lot of longtime fans were not happy with Discovery. Isaacs had been right. Some people might say that when you create something new from a 50-year-old franchise, you need to carefully take a few things into consideration, especially if you want to bring fans along for the ride, and Star Trek more than any other. Fuller had the Star Trek pedigree, but he didn't have the vision. When asked about Roddenberry's humanistic original vision during an interview a month before he stepped down as showrunner, Fuller said that it was vital. He said Roddenberry's vision is at the core of Discovery. It's about a woman's journey who, in order to understand something that is so completely alien from her, she has to first understand herself. That feels like it is going right to the heart of not only what's happening in the world today, but it's so easy to narcissistically look at somebody who is different than ourselves and think how we would think in their shoes. But it's a complete inaccuracy because we can't imagine who they are and how they think because we are not them. And that's a part of our journey on this planet, to get along. And it's also part of the character's journey in the first season.
From this moment on, you are my mortal enemy.
This does not sound like Star Trek. Can you imagine if Star Trek Voyager had been all about Tom Paris and his relationship with Starfleet, the Maquis, and B'Elanna? What if Star Trek The Next Generation had been about Worf as the only Klingon serving aboard a Federation vessel and dealing with his Klingon issues? Or what if the original series was about Spock trying to figure out who he was in a half-human, half-Vulcan body? Fuller may love these things about Star Trek, but Star Trek had never been about one character's journey. He picked the elements of Roddenberry's vision that he liked and threw away the rest. Sure, perhaps all those stories might be interesting. It might make great science fiction, but if you don't include the core things that make Star Trek what it is, then you are going to have a hard time convincing fans to embrace it. Fuller had a pretty interesting take on why certain fans like Star Trek and for what reasons. He said, conservatives like Star Trek for a reason that is different than the way liberals like Star Trek. And that's fascinating because I feel like conservatives like this quasi-fascist military regime where everybody's behaving and there's no wild expressions of personality that couldn't be quantified by science. And liberals love the inclusivity and hope for the future that we're all going to get along and accept each other's differences and celebrate them. And everybody has a place on one of those ships. If Fuller's take on the fans is accurate, then Discovery's first season is not balanced. Fuller, who aligns with the liberal Star Trek viewpoint he describes here, created a show that celebrates inclusivity and acceptance of others' differences. But he got so caught up in his vision for what he wanted Star Trek to be that he forgot a few important things. He forgot that Star Trek is built on hope. Discovery is the most pessimistic view of the future in any iteration of Star Trek. And while he said liberals believe that everyone has a place on those ships, Discovery's first season notably forgot to include a non-LGBTQ male character that wasn't totally evil or immediately killed off.
How do you explain that?
He was an idiot.
Whether it was intentional or not, a lot of longtime fans who were looking forward to Star Trek started to feel that perhaps this version of Star Trek was intentionally not made for them.
I've got this.
You can't rely on censors.
Don't question my calculations. Just relax and let me do.
The fans had so many issues with Discovery Season 1, it would be difficult to list them all here. But a few of the big issues included the main character, First Officer, disobeying her captain's orders and essentially starting the Klingon Federation War because she thought she knew better than her captain. It's compelling, it's brave, it's dramatic, but a lot of people believed it was so far removed from what a Starfleet officer would do that it didn't feel like Star Trek. It might have worked had there been something from Legacy Trek that fans could anchor themselves to while trying to adjust to the change, but nothing about the show felt familiar. Not the uniforms, the Klingons, the bridge of the ships, the tardigrade spore drive. The what? Then we learned Michael Burnham was actually the half-sister of Spock, the most iconic character in Star Trek history. Yes, Isaacs knew the fans were going to be mad. When you change the nature of a legacy character's backstory without earning the trust of the fans, it's not going to go over very well. And it didn't. The backlash on Discovery from the fandom was immediate. It was a gorgeous show, and not everyone disliked it, but the fan Rotten Tomatoes score for Discovery says everything you need to know. The bulk of the Star Trek fandom didn't love the show. Was Fuller and Kurtzman the main people responsible for this iteration of Star Trek? Why did Discovery feel so female-centric? Why did it seem like it was targeted for younger audiences? As mentioned earlier, MOONVES didn't like Star Trek, but he loved money. He also desperately wanted his streaming service to be successful, and Discovery was going to be its flagship series. When a new Star Trek series was announced in 2015, streaming had already been around for a long time. But most people still had their cable subscriptions. The cord cutting was growing, but at that time, it was mostly younger people getting rid of their cable and streaming on their mobile devices instead. The Roku and smart TV revolution hadn't even begun yet, and you can bet MOONVES and his research team were well aware of this fact. The soon-to-be Me Too'd CBS CEO would have wanted as many eyes on the new straight-to-streaming show as possible, and that meant making a show that people who made streaming a priority would watch. MOONVES was no novice to creating young drama shows. He was the primary reason the CW was created, and it became a haven for young audience TV shows. With Fuller out of the way and company man Kurtzman in charge, it would have been a lot easier for CBS executives to push in a direction that would bring them the viewers they wanted. And while it was always assumed that a typical Star Trek fan was male, studies over the years argue that the quintessential Star Trek fan is actually a woman, and that women over the years have not only dominated the Star Trek fan community, but helped create that community in the first place. Is this true? Well, not on our channel. Only 9% of the 18 million views received on this channel is by women. Now, we only talk about Star Trek, so maybe that isn't a good gauge of the overall fan base. but an online poll of 5,041 Star Trek fans in 2010 published results that 57% of fans were female. A 5,000 cross-section of the fandom isn't a smoking gun, but it's one of the few polls available on the topic, and one that would have been readily available when Discovery was being created. Would MOONVES want to tilt the series toward women if he felt like he could get more CBS All Access subscribers? Yes, he would. And it wouldn't have been hard to do either. Both showrunners Fuller and Harberts are openly gay men, and showrunner Berg is a woman. And Kurtzman has a history of working on gender-progressive series, and according to Fuller, Kurtzman suggested bringing LGBTQ characters onto Discovery before Fuller could even mention it. The bottom line is, it wouldn't have been hard to push for a female-centered program. And let's not forget that marketing shows women do the bulk of the buying in the household, so more female viewers generally means more purchased products for advertisers. A lot of this is conjecture, but also a reasonable path considering everything happening leading up to the show. Despite all the trouble we've discussed, Discovery was a success for CBS All Access. The number of subscribers doubled following the release of the new show, and Netflix had footed the bill. CBS was all in on All Access, which meant they were all in on Star Trek. The problem was Discovery Season 1 had proven divisive in the fanbase. Kurtzman likely realized early on that it was time to do damage control. He needed member berries fast, because a romp through the mirror universe hadn't won over the fandom. Perhaps an engagement with the Enterprise and legendary Captain Pike would garner even more CBS All Access subscribers. The Discovery Season 1 cliffhanger gave fans a glimpse of the Enterprise, but it would take more than a year for them to actually see it. In the meantime, the Star Trek franchise wasn't taking a breath. At the same time Alex Kurtzman was inking a 5-year deal to be the overlord of the Star Trek universe, rumors of a Star Trek Picard series were starting to come out. 2 months later, in August, it was official. Patrick Stewart was coming back for a swan song to play Jean-Luc Picard in what was being advertised as not a continuation of Star Trek The Next Generation. This would be the first of several Picard show missteps, but nonetheless, the fandom had a lot to look forward to. Discovery Season 2 was a marked step up for many fans. Captain Christopher Pike, played by Anson Mount, was like a breath of fresh air. He was in command, he was compassionate, he was self-deprecating, and most importantly, he radiated Starfleet ideals with every step he took. And the proper era uniforms were back. Season 2 would still have its issues, but it was starting to feel like Star Trek finally. At the same time, CBS announced that they would be developing a Star Trek Section 31 spin-off as a third live-action show for the franchise. The studio had also begun work on the Lower Decks animated series, which wouldn't launch until 2020. Star Trek Prodigy, another animated show targeted at younger children, was also announced at this time. For Discovery, including Captain Pike in the show had made a huge difference for fans who started making noise for a Captain Pike spin-off. Goldsman, who thought he was going to be working on a Captain Pike show when Kurtzman hired him to oversee Discovery, began pushing the idea of a Pike show. The first 2 seasons of Discovery had created a whole bunch of canon landmines for TOS-era Trek, and the production team made the wise decision to send that ship and its crew 950 years into the future where they couldn't do any more damage. Kurtzman explained that it was fun playing with canon, but he wanted to give Discovery an entirely new energy for Season 3. That was code for Discovery has to go. But we can't cancel the flagship series, so we're going to send it where it can just go do its own thing. That opening gave the fans what they wanted. Following the finale, media outlets asked Kurtzman about a fan petition to get a Pike spinoff. Kurtzman replied, "The fans have been heard. Anything is possible in the world of Trek." It would take time to hear more about the Pike spinoff, although discussions were ongoing about the possibility of the series. When Picard launched in January 2020, the initial response was optimistic. Picard was not the same commanding presence he had been on The Next Generation, but he was still Jean-Luc. And the opportunity to see Data, Seven of Nine, Riker, and Troy was a lot of fun for the fans. But the problem was the story fell flat. Once again, Picard, like Discovery, had this dark, oppressive tone that didn't feel like Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. The serialized nature of Season 1 of Picard made the show feel slow, which meant Patrick Stewart wasn't the only pedestrian thing about the season. So was the writing. Picard started with a bang and ended with a whimper. No one knows whether it is a coincidence or not, but Star Trek Strange New Worlds was announced at the end of Picard, and it was touted as a return to episodic Star Trek and something longtime fans would enjoy. By this time, Les MOONVES had already been fired, but his CBS All-Access streaming service had done well, netting a combined 19.2 million subscribers with Showtime. Following the merger of Viacom and CBS, All Access would eventually undergo a name rebranding to Paramount Plus in an effort to reach younger audiences who associate CBS with old crime dramas. Paramount Plus is also a name that fits better with the modern streaming landscape that included Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus, and Discovery Plus. And the 30,000 extra movies and TV episodes didn't hurt either. The change also included an updated look with a giant library of Star Trek content front and center. Discovery Seasons 3 and 4 would take its dark tone into a damaged and hopeless future Starfleet. Some things never change. But Picard Season 2 included the return of fan favorites Q and Guinan. The show once again started out strong and started to waver in the middle of its serialized format. As if recognizing the slump with fans in the season, showrunner Terry Matalas announced that Picard Season 3 would be the return of the next generation. It had taken considerable convincing of Patrick Stewart that it could be done well and give the crew a proper send-off, but the announcement was misplaced. After holding the secret for a year, Matalas couldn't wait a few more weeks to announce it at the end of Picard Season 2's finale? Was it a wasted opportunity or a necessary one? Paramount Plus was Star Trek or bust. Every series had already been greenlit for an additional season before its previous one had aired. Kurtzman and studio executives knew they couldn't lose the fanbase now. We like to believe that Kurtzman started turning the ship during Discovery Season 1 and gave the franchise rightful rudder at the end of Picard Season 1. Discovery has its fan base in place, but many longtime fans of the show were still waiting to fall in love with new Star Trek. When Star Trek Strange New Worlds premiered on May 5, 2022, something was different. For the first time in a very long time, Star Trek had returned to episodic television under Captain Pike and the Strange New Worlds cast. Was it great? We didn't know, but many fans agreed it was way better than any other Star Trek we'd seen, at least since Enterprise. With the first season of Strange New Worlds now completed, it feels like Star Trek may be headed in the right direction. Also, Picard Season 3 has the potential to be the amazing send-off we want for our next generation cast. If it's as emotional and touching as Picard's goodbye to Q, then we may be in for a treat. We're putting it in the category of cautiously optimistic. But as far as Strange New Worlds goes, there are a lot of things to look forward to. Ethan Peck was incredibly improved as Sexy Spock. And finally, for the first time in a long time, we felt ourselves starting to care for Star Trek characters again. We'll be anxiously waiting for Season 2, which can be expected to drop after Picard Season 3 does in early 2023. Will there be a Section 31 show with Michelle Yeoh? It's the most likely option to take Picard's place in the rotation, so Paramount Plus can maintain 50 Star Trek TV show episodes per year, giving us fresh Trek all year round. If Section 31 moves into production, the good news is it will star Michelle Yeoh, who is not only a rising superstar, but probably the best part of the first 3 seasons of Discovery. She described the proposed series as Mission Impossible meets Guardians of the Galaxy in space. It sounds interesting, but the real question is, can Kurtzman complete the franchise's turn and move forward, making Star Trek all fans can enjoy? In the end, you can make some of the people happy some of the time, but never all of the people happy all of the time. There are some fans who will never return to Star Trek. They are done, and they've walked away. But if new Star Trek series come in the spirit of Strange New Worlds, then this is Star Trek we can watch. Nothing may ever compare to Balance of Terror, The Inner Light, or Year of Hell. But as long as Star Trek shows are embracing a hopeful future for humanity via characters that we can all see a piece of ourselves in, and at the same time perhaps take us on new fantastic adventures, then we'll be happy to be a part of it. What do you think? Do you love, hate, or care less about new Star Trek? How did you feel about it in the beginning, and how do you feel about it now? What shows are you looking forward to? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Special thanks to Matthew Kadish of the Salty Nerd Podcast, whose Star Trek Civil War articles inspired this video. Also, check out this incredible Captain Pike Final Frontier inspired graphic design. Get 20% off your purchase by using coupon code THEPOPCAST. The link is in the description below.